Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ryan. It is great to be here at FutureWorks. It's great to be in person. I'm really excited after a little bit to be back on stage face-to-face with all of you. And I want to make sure that I acknowledge that so many of you traveled away from your families and your friends and colleagues and networks to be here. And I wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for this time, and hopefully the engagement and content that you see today is going to make that worth it. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Today's session, you'll hear from 3 industry experts in the ways that they've embraced better technology, better relationships, and better work inside their organizations. And at Indeed, we've been spending a pretty significant amount of time ensuring that we're building a stronger Indeed for our job seekers, of course, for our employers, and for our partners. Our mission at Indeed is to help people get jobs. Our strategy is to bring our job seekers closer to the hire. And our vision of that is that one day, job seekers will receive an offer or a job with the click of a button. And so we understand that our innovation and our overall progress takes partnership. So once again, really appreciate the relationships and the partnerships that we have across this room and throughout the industry. Now, this event at FutureWorks is about showcasing a lot of that innovation and that transformation. And hopefully throughout the day, through conversations amongst yourselves, and obviously throughout the various opportunities we've created for you to do so, you see some of the hard work that we've been focused on. And so what I'm going to do now is talk specifically about 3 things that I'm really excited about that we've been working on over the last few years. The first is content. We've heard loudly from our job seekers they want to see salaries in job postings. And we know that they are more likely to apply to jobs that have salaries in the job descriptions. Additionally, we know that job seekers share their frustrations when they see the same job titles in the same locations over and over and over again. And so we've been hard at work with our employers, with our internal teams at Indeed, and with our partners to ensure that job seekers have a very comprehensive and wonderful experience looking for jobs on Indeed. The second thing I'll share that I'm pumped about is engagement. Right? Over the last few years, we've been really hard at work creating opportunities for job seekers to engage with employers on our platform. And it's amazing to think about the progress that we've made when you hear we have almost 200% increase in the number of interviews that are being conducted on Indeed using our hiring platform or direct interview services, which is amazing. So you think about speed to hire in this industry, it is a metric that needs to be improved. Finding work for job seekers faster is an incredible responsibility that we believe we can play a part in. And the third thing that I'd like to point out and tell you that I'm excited about is quality of applications and pay for performance. So we've been hard at work improving our matching technology and screener questions and understanding the better ways that we can deliver a higher qualified candidate into your inbox. We've also been testing different ways to monetize that opportunity and thinking about, again, putting that job seeker in a path to be closer to the hire. Historically, when a job seeker clicks on your sponsored job, it's called cost per click. We've built our business around that. And we're testing opportunities for us to think about charging when someone actually applies to your job using Indeed Apply, or starting an apply on your site or in your ATS. So it's super exciting. And so as you think about all of this progression, as you think about all of the engagement, innovation, transformation that we've hopefully started to display with you this morning, we're really excited about the future. And our 3 guests today have been very close to us in this transformation. And I'm so excited to share with you their stories and the ways that they've leveraged better technology and better relationships and better work across their organizations. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests. Let's bring up Molly, Rajesh, and Dave. Welcome. All right. Hello. Have a seat, please. Thank you for being here. Would love to start out just by saying thank you so much for participating in our panel and being at FutureWorks. But why don't we start by just quick introductions, who you are, what you do, and what has been something that is completely fascinating or amazing that you've seen in the world of recruitment over the last 2 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Indeed. I'm Molly Q. Ford. I'm the Vice President of Global Brand Marketing at Salesforce. My job is to let everyone know that Salesforce is the best place to work. Our goal is to hire, right, and diversify our workforce. My most exciting kind of aha moment about hiring in the last 2 years is really what I call the pandemic job seeker. I think the pandemic job seeker is really looking for values alignment. They're not looking for just a job. They want a company that's a destination that aligns to their core values, and they feel like they can do meaningful work. Yep. So now we feel like candidates are asking us about our benefits, asking about our culture, asking to meet more members of the team during the interview process, right? And really that tug of war where you feel like you're interviewing someone like, do I want to hire you? I feel like more like people are like, do I want to work here? Right? So it's really that who's in the driver's seat in the interview process, and just really proud to see that people are showing you what matters to them in that values-driven approach to hiring.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, through the last few years, we've all heard of the Great Resignation, and what we've realized, it's a great realization, really, is that people care about where they're commuting to, or what type of job they're doing, or how they're spending their time. Mm-hmm. And so we've experienced some of the same stuff in our data as well.
Absolutely.
Dave, why don't you share something amazing that you've seen inside the space and introduce yourself to the audience?
No, thanks, Nolan. So Dave Scott, I lead the HR team at Dish Network. I think most know Dish as a pay TV provider, either through Dish or Sling TV or over the internet TV product. But we've started a journey to both build our own 5G network as well as launch retail wireless brands. And we happened to start that journey in July of 2020 with the adoption of Boost Mobile, which if you can imagine, not just dealing with the Great Resignation or the Great Talent Exchange or however you capture it, but also starting a brand new business and a brand new industry in the midst of that has been fascinating. And so for us, the ability to transform our hiring model, transform the talent that we've been seeking on a daily basis, and really look to interject our business into a really entrenched three competitor kings of industry in that area as we drive into retail wireless has been fascinating to go through. And as we dive into the conversation here, we can talk a little bit about how you go towards new talent that you've never had the opportunity to hire or develop with your own organization.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Rajesh?
Hi, I'm Rajesh. I run the talent acquisition for Infosys. We are a fairly large tech services firm, and hence I probably run one of the largest tech hiring units globally. A little over 100,000 hires a year in mostly developers and so on and so forth. I think I have discovered that in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, recruiters are superhumans. And I think that's my biggest realization one time again in my life. When March 2020 COVID hit and the world was putting brakes, we had 45,000 outstanding offers on that day. Wow. And pivoting, this amazing aggressive recruiters were always trying to close the next one, bring them in and move on to the next one, turning them into this full of empathy conversations that, okay, it's not, it's just a small pause, we will come back to it, we have never done this, and so on and so forth. It was difficult, it's not easy, but they did an amazing job, And then 6 months later, we were back at it trying to hire more than ever, scaling hiring 3 times of the last best year we had, and through a 12-inch screen, where you had to not just talk about the job, show the entire organization. We were almost 100% in-person interviewing world and moving to 100% in-person virtual world. You had to sell a company in a job market which was unprecedented, and then being successful in that job. I think the world of recruitment and each recruiter deserves a huge round of applause. That's my biggest learning in the last 2.5 years. So thank you.
That's amazing. And just out of curiosity, did you trademark the phrase that recruiters are superhumans? Did I hear that right? Yeah.
Not yet, but after this,
That's probably a wise idea. Yeah. That's amazing. So we know that the concept of championing the pay transparency conversation has been challenging for many. And we know that job seekers are 75% more likely to apply to a job that has salary information in it. How have you made that important to your organizations, and how has that impacted your businesses? We'll start with Molly.
So Salesforce made a commitment back in 2015 for pay equity, and we went out publicly and said that we did an audit and found a gap, right? And there's no, yay, we had an equal pay gap, right? But for us, it was about transparency, right? We wanted to say, as companies, we have the systems of record to know our pay gap, and it's our responsibility to close that gap. And so now we're leading something where twice a year we do an initial pay audit, and we were talking about in states like New York and Colorado, now pay transparency is paramount. Right? You will need to put the pay into the job description, and it'll follow in California in 2023. But what we said is we don't want to wait for the government mandates, right? If we know that 75% of these job seekers are looking for that, how do we get proactive about pay transparency? So that's kind of our goal, not to be led by legislation, but to do the right thing and really try to attract those candidates where we know that's going to be core to who they are.
Yeah. And have you, when you think about some of those challenging conversations that you've had internally, like how important is data in continuing that conversation internally and beyond?
Absolutely. Data is paramount, right? So we look to our systems of record to understand if there's a pay gap. And like I said, we do a pay audit. No one gets a pay cut, right? If you're paid differently, you're not getting a pay cut. But we do make sure there's like a bell curve. You're bringing people forward if there's a gap. Yeah. But it starts with the data that we can then say, what's the market, right? What's the total addressable market? What's the tension in the market? And what are we willing to pay? And I like, as a hiring manager, I'm having a discussion with my budget person and with my recruiter in advance. I know the pay band, which I can pay before I even get on the phone with the candidate, because I don't want to be in the position of haggling with the candidate, right? I'm trying to build a relationship with them as a manager and be their supporter. I'm not trying to nickel and dime them, right? So for me, I love the transparency, and I love going into the hiring that I know what my band is, what I'm able to pay for this role, and it really takes that out of the conversation. The recruiter can have that conversation versus myself as a manager. So it really makes me feel comfortable that I can advocate for the person and understand what they need and what's important to them, but I'm not having to be the budget guy.
Right, absolutely. Gentlemen, further comments on it?
Yeah, so I think, pay transparency or publishing pay ranges, we all know the time has come. Whether it's legislation or just the environment we live in. And most importantly, I think if you go back, employment is based on trust, right? People join companies based on a certain amount of trust they have in the organization or the process they go through. Similarly, organizations trust employees to do the right thing all the time. And I think transparency is a key pillar of trust. We all know that. And hence, and we all know, right, our pay ranges are there on the internet. Somebody can Google it and figure it out that, there are hundreds of sites just dedicated to gathering data on compensation and publishing that. Why allow them to do the wrong thing or represent data in a wrong way? Let's do it ourselves. Let's do the right thing. But it's not easy, right? It's all a lofty, nice goal right now, but it's not easy, right? You have internal challenges. So we have a big task force working on it, right, with legal, employee relations, human resources, marketing. And it's not just one place the compensation data goes to, right, just to the candidate. It goes in multiple places, legal or otherwise. And hence, to be aware of the entire field which you're operating in is also important for the organizations rather than just jump into publishing it. But I think the time has come. It's going to happen. It's better that organizations lead it from the front and make it happen in a nice, simpler fashion for themselves, rather than being forced by legislation in different parts of the country or the world for us to do so. The other nuance, given that I wear a little bit of a global hat, is in a lot of cultures it would be difficult to do this so easily, because there are a lot of people who are not happy to talk about their compensation in public. So companies will have to navigate that nuance also a little bit more than what we're thinking about it right now.
Sure. And sorry, go ahead.
No, he mentions the time is coming. As a Colorado-based employer, our time has already come.
Sure.
Right, and we had to go through this journey really starting 2 years ago as an organization. And for, interesting aspect of my seat is I have the opportunity of not only seeing what it takes to post it from a job, but also the internal equity, Molly, that you talked about, but simply the career architecture and the structure that's necessary for you to do well in advance of posting a pay range. Right, and so the framework now for the states that haven't gone down this path of getting your jobs right, getting the levels aligned across organizational structures, being prepared to present that data externally, the time is now to get your jobs into the right space. And then you're able to start making some decisions around, what is the range that I post? How do I think about internal equity for my existing team members and not showing the top of the range that may be too aspirational for individuals that are in the role, or the applicant's expectations that are set by showing a high end of the range. And all of a sudden, all of your applicants, of course, they're not modest and leaning in at the bottom, right? They're going to lean towards the top. So as we went to this implementation cycle, we had a ton of conversations around, are we a P25 to P50 company showing as a start of our range to level expectations, but then the talent doesn't apply for the job, right? And so you all of a sudden you say, oh, I'm going to be a P75, P25 company and go to the mid part of the range, and you start seeing better talent come in, and then your internal equity conversations begin to gain some steam. And so you're constantly moving the ends of this metric. And it's a fascinating kind of cat and mouse game of both driving the internal equity discussions that you want to have and moving your incumbent talent forward through the pay range without setting high expectations for every new joiner that is interested in coming to the organization. I heard this morning from the big stage about applicants are more likely to apply to roles that have pay ranges posted. We definitely saw when we are more aggressive in posting our ranges how the applicants came in, but we also saw the challenges that were associated with placing them where they belong in the range based off their competencies and skill sets. And so, as the country goes through this journey, I think we'll all, the world goes through the journey, we'll all get to experience it. But we also took the step of just saying, you know what, we're not doing it just in Colorado. Let's just do it nationwide now. Let's stop, making the choices hard and lean in to it. And actually partnered with Indeed on some articles that helped to think about at least the way Dish approached this transition.
Yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up, and you started it for me, so thank you. You work in gigantic organizations, right? And as you think about this is not just a one market story or situation. So, I mean, how do you think about this transformation, this change, and applying this knowledge or the data from one market to the next? Just curious. Rajesh, why don't you?
Yeah, so before I answer your question, just on the lighter note, everybody only registers the top end of the range. Nobody talks about the bottom end of the range, internally or externally. So, I think data and learning from outside in or applying learnings within the organization from one part to another have become key ingredients for success. And I would, not because I'm sitting here, but Indeed has been an amazing partner in bringing the insights from outside in, be it very simple stat about our competitors versus us in terms of job postings, how the performance has been and things like that. Just makes you think about, are they doing something better than us, or are we on the right track? To some deep, meaningful data coming from what the reviews on Glassdoor are saying to what, what's the trend looking like, and so on and so forth, right? So it kind of gives you and allows you to measure your own performance, not from the light of your internal benchmarks, but also from the external set of eyes and your own, curiosity that, can we do better? Can we do, something different here? That's one, right? The second is, as organizations become larger and larger, there are greater practices or different practices in different parts of the organization. And there is so much energy, so much innovation happening in different parts that it's important that we stay connected. And it's not a known thing for us that somebody will come and tell us, oh, I'm doing this great thing here. You know what, why didn't you tell me earlier? Because it's so amazing, we can do this across the world. And that's, that communication, and I'm no shame in saying that sometimes you get it on the social media because somebody's posting something great from your own organization and saying, I can do this. And I'm not talking about within recruiting or within HR. I'm talking about what's happening in marketing, what's happening in finance, what's happening in the business itself. There are so many things to learn and bring into recruiting world or into the HR world that it's amazing. We adopted our first chatbot from our customer service teams because they had an amazing chatbot which they had built, and we said, we are using a pretty primitive Q&A one, and you guys have an amazing one. Why don't you? Oh, but we only have designed it for the customer scenarios, not for the employee scenarios. And then you work with them to transition from one scenario to another scenario and build it and things like that. So there's a lot. And thanks to you guys, you actually keep us on our toes by telling us a lot more what's happening in the market.
Politely, of course. Politely, right. Yeah. Kindly, with love. Right.
Yeah. Right. And with a little bit of check.
Damn.
The only thing I'd add is that I think we could all agree as HR professionals that pay transparency is the right next step to do it. And as someone that's taken that step, I think it's important. I just wish all of you would take that step. Because I feel like often we're playing poker like with our cards turned around and we show them to everyone else, but I can't see your cards. And there is definitely a talent competitive advantage or disadvantage when you're as transparent as a company can be because it does feed your competitors information and it challenges you to have a much more transparent conversation with the candidate on the front side, and many of our competitors are having that on the back side. Right? And so I think the sooner that states or federal legislation get in line and levelize the playing field, I think we're all then able to go do the right thing without fear of being at a disadvantage.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Our partnership with Indeed is it's great, right? Because we're data junkies at Salesforce, right? If you walk in the room and you bring a leader some data, everyone perks up and is interested. Yep. So I think, when we say, and I know we're tired of saying these are unprecedented times, but they really are for a hiring standpoint, right? So when I'm able to go to my recruiting leadership and give them some insight and data about the company, and we've also had a few years of acquisitions. We've acquired some very beloved brands, right? That those communities don't want to see that brand go away, or what's the Salesforce brand, and how do we meld that? So I've looked to Indeed, Glassdoor to say, what are the reviews? What are people thinking? What are they saying about this? And so that data is how we're informing our strategy of how, we harmonize those brands or leave them separately, and also just how we're looking at the candidates in the market.
Yeah, that's great. Great insight. Thank you so much. Many years ago, a former colleague and industry friend, Jason Whitman, used to say that not knowing is not okay, right? Not knowing where your candidates are coming from is not okay. And that was sort of our evolution in candidate source tracking and knowing where your candidates are coming from. And the data behind this space, and particularly creating a wonderful job seeker experience for your candidates, is so important. And so it's amazing to hear the stories of how you're leveraging data, in your many markets at huge organizations to make meaningful decisions that are bettering ultimately the opportunities that these job seekers have at connecting with your brands and applying for your jobs and hopefully working for your organization. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That was a great conversation. So how can we partner more effectively during challenging times, right? So you had said it very nicely that, the last few years, it's been a doozy, right? and there are going to be, days like it ahead. So how can we continue to improve our partnership in the days ahead, years ahead, quarters ahead?
Right.
Rajesh, why don't you start?
Before I talk about the future, I think I have to acknowledge the partnership is fantastic. And at many levels, right? You spoke about difficult problems. I'll quickly, if I may, share an example. One of the toughest job markets, in my humble opinion, is Germany, because especially in the tech world. And and we've been trying a whole lot of things for the last decade to ramp up. And 2 years ago, we had a massive need to push a lot of hiring in Germany. And we tried everything. And one of the solutions which really worked out was this whole Indeed solution. And it was so heartening to see that Indeed was not trying to come and tell me, this is what our product does, or these many candidates I have on the database or my platform. It was about going to market differently. It was managing candidate pipelines differently. It was trying to go back and share success stories differently. So your team worked seamlessly with our marketing team, with an external tech platform provider, not recruiting platform, but the tech solution behind it, and with my team to make it happen, right? And because we never had all the resources to put on it. So you guys put your resources, made it work, and it was successful. Not to an extent where we were doing everything perfectly, but it kind of moved the needle. And the reason I'm sharing this example, the numbers were very small, but the reason I'm sharing this example is I don't think so in recruiting world there are standard solutions and standard problems. No longer. There are unique problems which require unique solutions. And the partners who can work with us on building those unique solutions on an ongoing basis get the most amount of respect and business, on an ongoing basis. And that, I think, is the key to be successful in our partnership. That, of course, you have things to sell and we have things to buy. There is a lot of, that 60% of the work is in a standardized fashion. But that 30-40% which happens on top, which could be a simple solution like how do you respond to the Glassdoor review comments, or how do you moderate them in a very meaningful fashion, makes a lot more lasting impact. And I really want to appreciate my account team, if they are here, for doing a great job with us on that.
Thank you for saying
really, really appreciative of some of the solutions which come out.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And, our client success team at Indeed, it's half of my organization, is focused on positive outcomes, right? And so, of course, we want to grow our business and so on, but ultimately, as a pay-for-performance organization where we need to show up every single day, no guaranteed long, et cetera, we have to ensure that the experience and the results for our clients is there and our partners are there. And ultimately, that partnership comes with finding solutions to problems that you're encountering or you have yet to encounter. And as we're thinking about our evolution and our product suite and the ways that we're engaging with customers, certainly that is a growth and opportunity for us. And certainly as great partners, it's useful to hear the feedback, better understand how you're engaging with Indeed, what you're hearing from job seekers, so we can, again, continue building a sound foundation for our job seekers to experience wonderful things during their job search, but also so that we can have more fruitful conversations and partnerships to drive results and amazing metrics across your many, many markets, right?
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. Either of you want to add to that?
Absolutely. One of the things we're challenged with is as we grow our company, looking for talent in different places, right? Diversity is an imperative for Salesforce, and we have some very lofty company goals to increase the VP level, double the number of VP level Black leaders at the company, as well as we have a gender equality goal on a global level, right? So when we look at those metrics, we say, how are we going to make them? We can't do homogeneous hiring of the cookie cutter communities we've been traditionally going to. So we're looking for, in Indeed and Glassdoor to really open up, I call it, widening that doorway so that more folks are allowed to come into tech. Right? We don't want tech to be some exclusive community. We really want to widen that door and bring in more candidates. And so we're using data in our Indeed partnership to understand where we can find and mine more candidates. And for us, it really was about maturing our practices to say, what are the core competencies of a salesperson? Mm-hmm. And if traditionally we said, an enterprise salesperson and they came from this industry or the tech industry, we know we got a cookie cutter homogeneous hire. Right? So how did we widen that aperture? We said, okay, what are the core competencies? It was a lot of HR work in the background to say, how do we go from hiring where you interview someone and go, what do you think? You like the candidate? What you think? Right? And we know that introduces all kinds of bias in the process, right? So we did a lot of work to do what we call inclusive hiring. So there's one systematic way. There are core competencies aligned to the job. So when we're interviewing a candidate, we know what we're looking for, what skills we're trying to assess. And then saying, hey, we have a medical sales team, right? So if someone came from the medical industry, how do they have transferable skills and the core competencies to be successful in those roles? So it's really made us open our eyes to how we're hiring, where we're hiring, and make greater opportunity for folks.
That's amazing. It's great.
I think as I think about my original relationship with Indeed when I came into Dish 5 years ago, our partnership was through a third party, our digital marketing firm, and one of the first steps we took was going to a direct relationship with the organization. And what I think that was an unlock for information coming into my team that just we didn't have access to. There was quite frankly a paper wall between our organizations, and getting through that and able to get simple lessons made a really big difference for my team. And one of my last trips pre-pandemic was actually to head down to Austin to go to the Idea Center and spend some time just learning about the data that's available and making simple changes, right? We had an in-home service technician job that with 2 words changed in the job description that Indeed highlighted to us. We drove up our applicant flow tremendously because we had the right frame to find the types of candidates that were successful in our environment. I think that story, while small, is a really tiny, noticeable thing that made a huge difference in applicant flow. And we all know if we can get them into the top of the funnel, right, driving them then to a successful end of the funnel is much easier. Mm-hmm. And so I value the insights that you bring beyond my organization that really allows us to perfect the work that we're doing on a daily basis, and just wasn't an insight that we had prior to having a direct relationship with the team.
Yeah, that's great. And hopefully we can create more of those engagements and ensure that we're leveraging the right data to make good decisions for you and your organizations. And I want to touch on something that Molly had mentioned. Over the last year, we started taking a look at obviously using our own tools to drive hires at Indeed, and also looked at the demographics of different geographies across the United States that said, all right, where can Nolan hire a more diverse workforce that can work in sales and client success? And so we now have teams in Chicago and Atlanta and Miami based on that, and thinking through the overall process of sourcing and screening and scheduling, heavily relying on our own interview technology to speed up the hiring process and identifying talent there. It's been remarkable how our insights have helped build our team at Indeed as well. So really appreciate it.
No, that's one thing I'm looking forward to. I think that whole 3S or something you're calling it, or sourcing screening piece. It's really important for big hiring setups that we get a lot more value through big partners, right? Mm-hmm. Because if the entire pivot of deriving value is with us, then we will always come short, because recruiter training, then working with you, then et cetera, et cetera. So if you can think about the recruiting value chain and start saying, I can actually play in larger parts of that value chain for you so that I can give you a better solution, we are more than happy to partner with you and experiment and see how we kind of come up with a solution. Because it will be a unique solution to us. It may not be a standard product, but I think that's where the world is going, more customized solutions rather than standard products. So very, very open to that idea.
One of the other things I wanted to add, we're doing a lot of work to overhaul our job descriptions, not just for the gender, conversation we've said where we find like women are turned off by jobs that say ninja and all that other stuff, because I'm not a ninja. But I'm great at what I do, right? But we're really looking at how do we have a consistent way of job descriptions and how we're talking about the company. And so we're looking to Indeed and data from there that says, what are women looking for a job? What are salespeople looking for a job? What are some key words you might be missing out? Or, one of the things we said is we want to attract more women into sales, right? We want more applicants of women going into sales. And we said, what about our job descriptions or how we're portraying sales is not appealing to this community? And really looking for that data to say, what are the buzzwords we should have in our job description? And I mean, they're obvious things sometimes, right? But flexibility, right? Where's that flexibility? Where's that hybrid work? What are the benefits we can tout to bring more diverse applicants forward? And we're really looking for that information to really shore up and tighten up how our job descriptions are done, because candidly, every manager is doing kind of their own job description, right? So then we know we have all these biases that creep in, or buzzwords we don't want, or not consistent ways to describe the company or the culture. So we're really trying to be intentional about how our job descriptions really appeal to those folks in different communities.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're on to the last question, which is on brand. And it is, what does the future of work look like for you? And how can Indeed help you fulfill that mission? We'll start with Dave.
Yeah, the future of work, I think, is interesting. And right, what's an HR meeting without a conversation about return to site and finding the right balance between the employee's need and what the employer perceives their need to be. We made, I think, a unique decision to get back on site fairly early in the pandemic. And so by May of 2020, about 8 weeks after going on site, I had 50% of our staff return to our corporate roles. And then by May of 21, we had 100% of our staff on site. So we're used to operating together every day, which has been a challenge, right? And we made that decision knowing that turnover would go up, and we made that decision knowing that acquisition of talent would be challenging. Yep. And so as we lean forward into the future of work, the conversation is really about transparency, and it's really about focusing your efforts around those applicants that want to work in your environment. And then when you are transparent from day one, you understand in the initial conversations and the initial postings your ways of working, you do clean a fair amount of individuals. Some would say as many as 75% of the applicant flow out of the consideration. Yep. And then it's about focusing on what you give in return for that ask, right? And so one of my most common discussions in the office is how do we earn that commute every day? How if you're going to spend 25 to 45 minutes in a car, how do I pay you back for that? Not just from a total rewards perspective, but just from the development, the engagement, the problem solving, and the creative work that we give the opportunity for people to work with. Definitely has made my talent acquisition team work that much harder, and I appreciate all the efforts that they do. And it's made our HR business partners work a little bit harder around retention. But the most important thing it's done is it's made my managers own the message. And managers are integral in that daily interaction that the HR team can't characterize, can't always carry the day on. The one benefit, I would say, to the choice that we've made is I don't spend 90% of my time wondering whether it's Tuesdays and Thursdays you should be back in the office, or how to throw a party on Wednesdays to hopefully engage some folks, or where, if anyone's working in the state of which I'm paying taxes on, because those considerations don't come into play simply because we are as direct. I don't know how many companies will follow us on this path, but I think as we enter a recession, as jobs get more competitive, as companies make the choice between working remotely down the street or working remotely around the world, which are all choices that C-suite executives are talking through right now, I think you'll find a balance in this work that drives collaboration and teamwork with a big lean towards earning that commute.
Great. Rajesh?
So, and fantastic points, Dave, especially around the hybrid and that part. And that's one big challenge we're also seeing. Challenge, opportunity, but recession complicates it. So completely agree with most of the points. The other piece on the future of work, especially in the tech industry, is skill gaps. and skill shortages across the world. And the tech industry today anyway has shortage of talent to the demand it has. And Indeed has published some amazing amount of data on that for everybody to refer. But so there is already a lot of effort on how do you bring a lot more people into the industry. And then you overlay a bigger challenge, which is every time you think you are established in the industry, your skills are going to get outdated and you'll have to upskill, reskill yourself to be relevant again. And that's the entire current workforce and the new workforce coming in, plus the shortages. So it's a fairly complicated problem which the world, in the tech world, we all need to solve for. Some solutions we have been working on is amazing amount of a recruiting continuum, that you're recruiting internally and externally at the same time, so that your employees, when they're reskilling themselves or upskilling themselves, do have the same set of opportunities which they think they would get maybe with a competitor internally and on a constant basis. B, we are doing a lot of work with partners and otherwise on bringing non-tech people, right? Non-STEM graduates, high school grads, community colleges, which typically do not get represented in the tech workforce in a meaningful fashion. And how do you build the bridges for them from going completely non-tech to entry-level tech and then beyond on an ongoing journey? So that we think is one big problem which we need to work on. The third bit, slightly more, is on the hybrid culture is, companies like ours are just not dictated by what we want to do and what our employees want to do. We work with the Fortune or the Global 2000 big companies, and their policies and their ways of thinking and their approach to hybrid also influences us. And hence, we are working in a three-way conversation, our employees, our clients, and us on an ongoing basis to solve this problem, and hence super complex. So hopefully things will evolve much faster where people will settle down in this approach.
Sure.
But I think next few years are going to be interesting. Not many people, and then how do you keep them engaged in this complex hybrid world?
Great, thank you.
Great.
Ready? Thanks, Molly. Go ahead.
Absolutely. The future of work is diverse, inclusive, distributed, and connected. And I love what you said about coming into the office, right? For us, it really is going to be how do we inspire employees to be connected, and someone who's sitting at our headquarters in San Francisco can be just as successful as someone who's sitting in a remote location, right? So really making sure that we're really focused on our company culture and really making sure our say-do ratio matters, right? So someone can be just as successful no matter where they are, and we can build a more inclusive workplace.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Better technology, better relationships, better work. Give it up for our panel if you can, please. Thank you, Molly, Dave, Rajesh. Thank you so much for joining us at FutureWorks. Thank you for joining me here on the stage. It is inspiring sharing the stage with you. Thank you for your partnership, and we'll look forward to the future. Hope everyone continues to have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.